Hey guys, welcome to a slightly different video today. I've got my friend Jessica coming on today to talk about her very interesting and unusual career path. She's a deep trance channel. How often do you get to meet a deep trance channel in your life? So I thought it'd be really cool to bring her on, ask her some questions and have some fun. For coming to sit on my sofa today.
Thank you for having me.
It's such a joy. You've got a really interesting job, haven't you?
I have quite an unusual job, yeah. It's not the most mainstream thing.
No. Deep Trance Channel, would you describe yourself as that?
Yeah.
And most Deep Trance channels that I've kind of come across in the past channel spiritual entities, spiritual beings. Mm-hmm. But you channel something slightly different.
Yes, I channel 7th dimensional Pleiades.
And how is that different?
I think quite a lot of when channelers are working with spirit, as in those that have passed over, or kind of there's different realms as well. I mean, that's quite involved, the different kind of levels where there's different entities and energies. But Pleiades is essentially extraterrestrial consciousness, so it's from a different star system. And it seems to be that there are more people channeling Pleiades at the moment, and different star systems as well. It's like as human consciousness has lifted into a higher vibration, we're now able to integrate the energies from those star systems because they vibrate at a higher frequency. And that would have been difficult to take into the body and into the energy. Maybe a few decades ago there were some that were doing it, but it was quite unusual. Whereas the resonance with those that have passed over, or any kind of form of spirit that's more within our realm, is easier to allow in and resonate with. Mm-hmm. And also there's just the kind of perceptions that come through from that higher consciousness. If you talked about some of the concepts that they bring through 30 years ago, it would have been very much rejected because humanity kind of wasn't ready for that level of understanding. It was too controversial to the regular way that things were presented at that time. Yeah.
So are Pleiades coming through because they want to tell us something? They have a message for humans?
Yeah, so they've spoken quite a lot about this, and they explain that because there is this shift happening with humanity and the planet, so not just us as beings, like the planet and everything that is kind of existing within it, there's a vibrational shift occurring. It's a kind of natural cycle throughout the cosmos, but also humanity, its consciousness is quite cyclical too, and we're going into an age where it's at a higher vibration, at a higher frequency. And so they have explained that this is going to create quite a big shift in our energy and our energetics, and that affects everything else within the cosmos. So, like the butterfly effect, something minor can happen in one place and be triggered something else at the other side of the universe. And so everything that happens for humanity works into the tapestry of the rest of the cosmos and creates further expansion, further understanding and growth. So the reason that Pleiades and other ET consciousness are now starting to interact is because they want to help us by giving us any information that can drive us in the direction that's going to keep that elevation of consciousness and prevent us from separating. So they've spoken before, and some of your subscribers might be aware that there is this kind of separation going between the 3rd dimension and the 5th dimension, and ideally we want to all collectively move into the 5th together rather than have a kind of dimensional separation.
And that's just about how aware you are?
It's about how much your vibration is lifted, because if you're still in a very low vibration, then you won't resonate with the 5th dimension. So it's about lifting that resonance.
And is that to do with bringing your your mindset in alignment with love.
Yeah, your mindset, and that's how you kind of move your whole energy. So by working on how you think and speak to yourself primarily, actually, because when you're kinder to yourself, you'll be kinder to everyone. And it's not about, you know, kind of following the narrative of, well, you should be kind, like, you know what you should be doing deep within yourself and deep within your consciousness. So it's about kind of aligning with your most authentic self and bringing yourself into a higher vibration, and then naturally that resonance will carry out to everyone that you interact with. And they speak quite often about how you're not able to change anything for anybody else when you're in a low vibrational state. So quite often people, especially if they come onto a path of healing or they start the beginning of their spiritual journey, they want to go and make it better for everybody, want to be able to help everybody. But quite often they still have a lot of shadow layers to get rid of, a lot of density to release. And without being able to release those things first, then their vibration is still low, so it doesn't have the same uplifting effect on others, and they're constantly they'll take the energetics of other people's pain or trauma into their own energy system. Whereas when you learn to release that first and take care of yourself first, your vibration lifts, and the effect that you have will be much more profound and resonate much further into the energy fields of others than when you haven't kind of done that work to allow yourself to lift. It's like you can't have a suitcase and keep stuffing it and stuffing it and stuffing it with baggage and keep fitting things in. You have to allow some of the heavy items to go so that you can fit more into your own energy.
Otherwise EasyJet won't let you on.
Exactly.
What's the most surprising thing that the Pleiadians have ever shared with you?
Oh,
there's probably quite a lot, isn't there?
yeah.
Or most recently most surprising? Or early on, what was the most surprising?
There's been so many things that have actually quite challenged my concepts. That's one of the strangest things that I noticed when I began, was that there would be some beliefs that I thought they'd have the same sort of opinion on, and they've really come to know
I've seen
wrong.
that happen with you as well when you're deep trance channeling. You say something and you come out thinking, oh, really?
They talk, I don't know, some of they've really gone into, I suppose it's not exactly surprising, but they've said some kind of prediction things, like to do with energy under the Sphinx at Egypt. The most recent one was a discovery of a pyramid under that they've said that there's a pyramid under the Bermuda Triangle.
Oh my god!
And then
in the middle of the sea.
Yeah, and then I have subsequently come across other sources saying the same thing. So through social media, it might be someone starts to talk about the energy under the Sphinx, or someone else. I saw the other day someone had put this post about this pyramid under Bermuda, and I messaged a group of friends that were at the channeling, and they remembered them coming out with that months ago, and it was so that is always surprising, and it shouldn't be because I trust them, but it's still amazing when you get those kind of big confirmations of things that becomes into the collective consciousness or collective awareness. Some of the other funny bits that they've spoken about, like their kind of their way of reproducing, that they like reproduce by energetics essentially, and that they can choose to collectively create a being,
and not just two of them, but a bunch of them.
They can either do it with just a couple of people, but they don't need to go through the same fun actions that we do in order for that to happen.
Horrific actions.
Sometimes horrific to create, you never know. But yeah, so that kind of process, that was quite deep insight and understanding. They explain it a lot better than I'm usually able to when I try and relay that information. And also when they talk about the connection that the cetaceans, so that the whales and dolphins have with our consciousness, and how their sound is an interaction, and I find that kind of stuff quite amazing. And it was all very new concepts to me when they started talking about it. So
sound is fascinating, isn't it? Because sound healing is becoming such a big thing now. Very common and not so wacky, whereas 10 years ago it was quite wacky.
And they've been speaking about that for a good couple of years, and they try and kind of elaborate on that, and amazing how many people who come to channelings that will just organically ask questions about sound. Pleiades haven't brought anything through about it at that point, but it's like there is a draw with people that either work with sound and music. So I've done a channeling for the music industry before as well, and have kind of people in that industry are interested in the work too, and often those questions get asked at channeling. So it's like there is a match within that kind of frequency, probably because it's becoming such a profound understanding of how much healing we can obtain and how our energy can be changed so much through sound. Amazing. And how often we are exposed to sound that is not helpful to our body and our energy.
What's an example of that?
Well, like just a lot of common music, the frequency at which it's recorded at. So there was the shift, it was actually in 1939 by, there was, some sort of ties to the Nazis there with, there became the standardized recording at I think 440 hertz, whereas 432 is much more benevolent to the body and the energy, and so 440 is the standardized recording. But there is now kind of movements where people are coming away from that and starting to record at 432 again, because they're starting to understand that is more in harmony with the body's energy.
And singing bowls are like tuned at that. I don't really understand much about that, but I have noticed.
You can get singing bowls tuned at either, so it's worth, if you do want to use one, to try and make sure that it is tuned at 432 and not 440.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. What's something about the Pleiadians that most people wouldn't expect?
I think a lot of people still, well, I say still, to a lot of people, even the idea of Pleiades is completely new.
Yeah.
So I think there's still a conception that they are very much physical bodies, and that if they come to Earth, they come in a physical body, and that is kind of a fixed state. But what they explain is that there are different dimensions within their star system, the same as there are different dimensions within the Earth plane. So like we might not be able to see or perceive, for like just throwing it out there, like the angelic realms or the realms of fairy or something like that, doesn't mean that they don't exist. We just don't perceive them because we're not an energetic match to that. So Pleiades have said that that's the same for them. So there'll be other beings in Pleiades that they don't perceive because they're not in the same kind of resonance as them. So it's not like, oh, if you're in Pleiades, there's this kind of standardized form. There are people, like beings in Pleiades, that are pure consciousness. So they have no physical form, just consciousness and energy, and that's usually in the sort of 11th and 12th dimension, their frequencies. But from around the 7th, the 6th, 7th, 8th, they can take a more physical form, and they actually have choice as to whether to take physical form. Once you get sort of lower than 6th, then you start to have a physical form almost on a permanent kind of basis. So that they explain to us how they're able to make kind of communication. So although they still have to be in resonance with something to a degree to physically experience it, they are highly telepathic, so they can communicate telepathically with different frequencies more easily than we can, except that's opening up to humans greatly now, which is why a lot more people are becoming able to tune into different frequencies, different consciousness. So we're kind of learning the same skill set almost, or reawakening to our ability to be able to have that. But for them, it's something that is very easy and natural, and that's why they can kind of make different levels of communication and perceive things collectively. So when I channeled Christos, who is the being that presented himself initially to me, I began by seeing him as kind of one entity, but then as I got used to working with him, he explained that he could be an individual being, but he can also tune to a collective consciousness. So when they answer questions, they're usually answering collectively, but occasionally you'll hear him say I. So he'll have like moments where he's kind of perceiving it from his own perspective, and then like joins back in with the collective, and it becomes we again. So he kind of dips in and out of it.
And you said at the start, when they come to Earth, they don't necessarily come in their physical body, or they don't come in their physical body.
No, they tend to. I think there are some who are able to literally travel through space in physical form. but they're more easily able to adapt into a more humanesque kind of figure, so that they're not alarming or overly noticeable. Not so much, with some lower frequencies, they might do that to disguise themselves. More so with Pleiades, it's because they know that it can be too jarring to humans to see something that is too questionable to their perception of reality. So it's to help us to be able to resonate with their energies. But there are some who can come in a light body and just kind of pass on consciousness, but we'd be less likely to experience them as a physical form because they would speak kind of more through others. There's varying kind of degrees as to how it works depending on what frequency those beings have come from and what they're able to connect with us here as well.
And when they come, do they live here, or do they just come for a couple of weeks, like a holiday, and then go back?
I think there's both.
Okay.
I think there's both.
Yeah.
So, and I think there's in fact many who came many, many years ago, and they've explained that they stayed for various kind of projects to do with human consciousness and trying to help us remain in a lighter era, which didn't necessarily work out when we went through the cycles, and we're moving back towards that now. But they came, and some of them got stuck by spending time here. They got stuck into this physical form that they'd adopted, and it was like once they'd taken on such a heavy form, they then also lost that connection that helped them to know how to travel back without developing technology to do so. And so then they were kind of thrown into the genetic and incarnation cycle. So there's like these kind of resonant bloodlines and that kind of carry stronger genetic connections to those previous
So would they have
forms.
come in their body? Those ones that got
I
stuck?
think they came as energy and adopted a body, adopted a human
body. And they
body,
would have just manifested that, like, as a baby, or manifested it? Would they have manifested
I don't know.
that body?
I think they were in, like, they came into an adult form. But then there will be the kind of subsequent bloodlines that from birth would have carried that kind of energy. And they do go into this in quite a lot of detail in a few of the channelings. In the next book that I'm writing, I think we're going to get more into that. I channeled since the book that I've written that is available has a lot of deep insight, but they keep bringing through new layers, and so that I think that's why they've told me to keep writing, because like okay, you're ready for the next installment now, and whoever kind of reads the books, it's going to be in alignment with their energy and what they're kind of processing, and so then when they read the next one, they'll be ready for the next kind of level of insight. But they do go into things quite a lot, and a lot of my live channelings are available as recordings where they maybe explain these concepts a little bit more fully.
Yeah, your book is excellent. I haven't read it all, but it's the parts that I've read are so inspiring, so well written, so real, so raw.
Yeah.
Very much from a human experience. The way that you talk about your dark night of the soul and, your human experiences that have led to these incredible awakenings and this amazing psychic alignment.
It was interesting because the process of writing it helped me to understand how much, like at a really deep soul level, I could really take in that integration of the experiences that I'd had and that we all have, and their purpose and what they lead to, rather than just looking back on things and thinking, oh, that was a really rubbish time. Like you have a totally different perspective of it when you understand how it's connected to the point in your life that you can move into. And the book is obviously quite instructive in some ways as to how people can reach that point without having to go through necessarily those kind of levels of trauma, how you can recognize when you're going through that awakening process or choose to go through it, and when you're being called to release the density, which can sometimes seem a little bit destabilizing, but if you know that it's going on and how to deal with it, then it's nowhere near as destabilizing, and you can recognize it as an opportunity for growth. And Pleiades, and throughout the book, they like to deliver the message that power and insight is within all of us. It's just about remembering that you have it, reawakening yourself to that knowledge, so that you do not need your spirituality to be facilitated by others. It's all within you. You are just as much of that part of that kind of source energy and creator being.
Awesome. What do the Pleiadians think we're getting right as a species?
Their perspective is very different. It's much less polarized, so they wouldn't say, oh, you guys are doing this right and you're doing that wrong. They would see that the experiences that we have are leading us into higher states of awakening and consciousness, and therefore the negative experiences that we seem to have are just as important. I think there is concern throughout the whole galactic community about some of the nuclear munitions and things that we have, and how that might affect the rest of the cosmos, which is why you may have already heard about it. There's been interventions when there's been launching of missiles and things before. So they're not so keen on that. But I think that they realise that a lot of this, or they perceive it, that it's necessary for us to all integrate with and look at that and look at what's going on in order to expand our awareness. So whilst we may see a lot of especially the tumultuous few years that we've just gone through, and I think we have more of that coming as well, certainly leading up to about 27, we see that as difficult or chaotic or, very, very challenging for a lot of humans. But for them, their perspective is more that it's an opportunity for us to really move into the higher states of growth and understanding, so that we're starkly shown the elements that are maybe not working for us as a species and not working for us at a level of consciousness and expansion, so that we can work towards a different kind of energy and eradicate those kind of elements from our human experience.
Awesome answer.
Thank you.
What's a small practical habit that humans can cultivate for inner peace?
Different things work differently for different people. I find meditation is my kind of key way into accessing my higher self. But when I do meditations, I speak through them because they're usually guided for other people. If I try and sit quietly and switch my mind off, I go into all different kind of places, just like anyone else does. So there are you don't have to just sit and be quiet and be still. My meditations are highly visual, so I'll always go on a journey and pick up different information and messages. So that works for me. It's allowing yourself anything that takes you out of the egoic chatter that blocks you from being able to really step into the higher self and a different perspective. So automatic writing works really well for a lot of people, because you don't have to share that with anyone. You're not speaking out loud. You're not going to feel silly. You might think it doesn't make any sense at first, but most people, once they begin that, once they're a couple of paragraphs in, will start to find that it takes form and it takes guidance for them, and it really helps you to remove yourself from the ego, so that you can become more integrated with higher energies or with source energy. Being out in nature, of course, is very expansive for the actual energy. And I've heard recently that humming actually switches off the brain, so it it switches off the mind chatter. Not the brain, that would be good. Yeah. But it switches off that chatter and takes you out of that. So if you're finding that you're getting highly anxious about something, that helps to kind of override that, because you've stopped focusing on the chatter. But yeah, there's certainly different modalities for each person. I think that's part of the soul's journey, is finding out how it works for you. Some people practice qigong, yoga moves the energy around the body, but obviously you can't necessarily be doing any of those practices all the time. So you want to kind of find things that you can work around. But learning to recognise where you hold judgment over yourself and over others too, and just jumping out for a second and sort of laughing at yourself when you do it, or you might notice yourself think something about what someone else is wearing, for example, and if you catch yourself doing it, you don't have to reprimand yourself for that, but just go, didn't I kind of, why am I worried about that? Why am I concentrating on that? It's not relevant to me. And it takes you, it then kind of, it allows you, your ego is important for the human experience. It's what holds you into human experience, essentially, and what gives you the different drives that we have. But it also can be really problematic when it runs the show. So when you can find ways to just disconnect from it a little bit, it's still there, it'll keep you safe, but it's not going to rule the roost and detach you from higher consciousness.
Humming, before I kind of became a lot more dedicated on my spiritual path, and when I experienced quite a lot of anxiety, and also I get travel sick,
right?
And I noticed just naturally that I would hum and feel better.
Wow.
Like, yeah, so I'd just be like, but I feel like a total weirdo. But it would work, so I didn't care. And like, and yeah, more recently, since becoming a yoga teacher, I've learnt about, Om.
Yeah.
And there's some breathing practices. There is one called the humming bee breath.
Oh,
and that
okay.
is humming. You just breathe in, and then on the exhale you hum, and you do that for about a minute or longer, and you get so beautifully centered, so calm, and it vibrates the vagus nerve, which is the center of your nervous system.
Yeah.
So that's like.
Oh, so
humming,
it's the first time I've had any kind of further explanation for it. It's funny how.
Awesome.
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah. I think my little boy does that sometimes, actually.
Oh, yeah. It's so natural, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he can be quite sensitive to overstimulation and things.
Yeah.
I think he does take himself out a little bit.
That's so good, and I hope that, I'm sure you would be an amazing mum and like encourage that kind of thing, but I could imagine other mums would be like, be quiet, or like, don't you look silly, or something like that.
Oh, sometimes I do, go the wrong way with it. We all do, don't we? I think you have moments where you're just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's trying to kind of find ways to open up their spirituality as well, because they're here to kind of continue anything that any foundations that we set out, same as our parents would have set those foundations out for us. In some cases, obviously not in all, but generationally. And so trying to kind of keep their awareness open so that they don't have quite so much work to do, although I do think there's an element where that is naturally happening.
So, if you could ask the Pleiadians a fun or frivolous question or a serious question, because I know we've talked before and you've said, I'm always thinking of things to ask them, but I never have the opportunity because you're always the one doing the channel. So what were a couple of questions?
Well, I don't have any fun and frivolous ones.
Okay.
Anything that I tend to think about seems to be quite in depth. So one of them was I wanted to know a little bit more about the connection with blood groups and Pleiadians and starseeds. How that kind of like plays into our story, like whether that is still kind of, whether that actually affects our ability to connect with them. Or
so you mean the ones that came a while ago and integrated into the human race, those bloodlines?
So just to kind of explain that a little bit more, there's a connection between some of the rhesus negative groups, and there have been giant skeletons found in many different places over the planet.
Giant
like sort of 12 to 15 foot skeletons found. A lot of them are on Sardinia.
Okay.
And a lot of them get taken away very, very quickly once they're discovered. But in Sardinia, amongst the kind of the islanders that live there, it's quite well known that they've had these skeletons, and they connect them to Pleiades. So there's this understanding that these giant beings, came from Pleiades, and the blood group of the skeletons, which they've been able to discover later, is often O negative, and it's the most common blood group on Sardinia, even though it's an uncommon blood group, and I'm O negative as well. So, and I didn't know any of that when I started channeling Pleiades or when they started coming through. So I find it quite interesting. Does that mean that there's a kind of a predisposition to making that connection, or is it just coincidental, like anyone can kind of make the connection? Is it easier? Is it more facilitated by that?
Yeah. Shall we see Jess do some channeling? Shall we ask the Pleiadians to come through? Would that be fun?
Sure, yes.
Yeah, okay.
We are 7th dimensional Pleiadian consciousness. We are happy for this opportunity to connect with you and welcome any questions that you have for us.
Hello, thank you so much for coming to talk to us today. So we're recording a video right now for YouTube, and I wondered so the people that are destined to tune in and watch the video, do you have a message for them that could help them with inner peace?
It is interesting the way that humans are so drawn via their vibration to experience and watch different elements and understandings that can be presented to them. So in plain terms, if those who are tuning in, their vibration is already going to be somewhat aligned with higher frequencies, and that is why they are drawn towards this knowledge and understanding. There are many more of you as humans who are collectively starting to awaken to higher frequencies and move yourself into this state of higher vibrations, which is partly why we are able to bring this understanding to more people, and why there are more of you who are beginning to integrate and choose to look to alternative sources and different places that you can obtain information about your spiritual journey and your spiritual path. If you have been called to listen to us speak to you, then we would suggest that that is because you are ready to start stepping into the position of being the creator of your own human experience, and that you are now moving out of the state of victimhood or subject of life happening to you. You are moving into a position of higher awareness as you connect more with source energy, and that is why you are able to connect with us, because our knowledge and understanding and our perspective on the human experience is more aligned with where your consciousness is able to go. There may still be certain concepts that we can transfer to you that will seem challenging, and at soul level they will begin to integrate, and you will be able to understand and feel whether that is truthful and resonates to you in your own time, even if it seems a little bit challenging at first. So the fact that you have been drawn to listen to this work is an example of your vibration lifting on a personal and collective level. So those of you who are listening now will be able to adjust your mindset into states where your consciousness can become more elevated. So you are in a good time at the moment to work on the way that you speak to yourself and the practices that you have that can keep you open and in a more expansive state.
Thank you. If the Pleiadians could offer Earth one piece of advice on what to stop doing immediately, what would that be?
There is nothing that you should particularly stop. You will naturally become aligned with different ways of thinking and different levels of consciousness that will alter the course of maybe some of the behaviors that humans exhibit, or some of the patterns that you have fallen into that are destructive for both your individual experiences and your collective, and for your planet as well. So to try to immediately halt something doesn't generally work for humans. Humans have a tendency to feel very destabilized if something is too immediate, which is why it takes many years. It has taken many years for us and various other levels of consciousness to make connection with you, because you are not very good at suddenly adapting to something. This is not a criticism, it's just an observation. It is necessary for humans to go through longer integration processes to take on something new, and also to change or stop a habit. Although there are more of you that are beginning to understand that you are able to consciously interact with your higher selves and your human experience, and therefore actually drop some of the habits that you believe are habits, but actually they are just something that you do in a particular moment. So you can choose whether to continue a certain behavior by choosing whether to remain in vibration with it. And as your vibration lifts or alters, you can step out of that particular behavior. So this works on a collective level also. You are starting to be able to recognize the harmful things that occur individually and collectively, and move on to timelines or frequencies, states of vibration, where those experiences are no longer happening. But if we were to direct you to stop doing something now, many of you would actually feel quite rebellious at that notion and choose not to take that on as advice. You need to experience things, not just as humans, we need to experience also, but humans, this is particularly relevant. You need to have the experience in order to believe that something is possible to alter and to change, unless you have been particularly conditioned through many, many generations to believe on as you would interpret it, but blind faith. Although, as you may be aware, there are very few humans comparative to what there were in your more distant past who believe anything on blind faith anymore. And you need to experience, and you're learning to understand that you can actually just have that experience, that you can choose which experiences you do have, and whether you integrate with experiences that are going to lift your vibration or hinder it.
Thank you. You mentioned timelines. Could you talk a little bit about, so when we do manage to shift and change our energy, our thoughts to be more in line with source or love, how does it work to kind of align with a different timeline or experience it like a parallel kind of life?
So the vibration needs to be altered. So essentially the timeline is just the vibration that you are in resonance with. So there are multiple different outcomes and dimensions and possibilities for you each individually as a human. Some of you will have counterparts that are exactly the same human form, having the same human experience, who move through very different pathways, and therefore the outcome is quite different. But for some of you, you will only have one singular experience as your particular being in your particular body, but you will have many others in different layers of frequency and incarnation. It is different depending on how the energy is chosen to incarnate at the beginning of the process. The alteration of the timeline that you're on simply means to shift your vibration to match with a particular frequency. And so if you are in a state where you are aligned with your authentic self and you are feeling comfortable with yourself and able to regularly experience states of joy, that does not need to be permanent. You will still have human emotions and waves, but if you are predominantly in quite a high vibration, then you may notice that things that you wish to experience happen faster for you. Or sometimes if you have been in a lower state of vibration and then you make the alteration where you step into a more trusting state, where you're more aligned with source energy, you suddenly notice how things start to happen faster. So you find that the opportunities that you'd been wanting and hoping for begin to come to you. But often, in order for those things to come to you, in order for the vibration to lift, you have to let go of the expectation that those things will happen, because often the expectation is what causes you frustration, because the brain looks for confirmation that you're going to experience those things, but the brain doesn't read the energetics in the way that the body does. And so when you trust the energy and you can feel these experiences coming into your energy, that's often when you actually are able to transfer to a timeline where that reality comes to you more quickly.
Thank you. And I've got a fun question for us at the end. If the Pleiadians were to design an ideal human city, what would that look like?
So you've had many of these ideal human cities in your past, and one of them that you may be familiar with is that of the times of Lemuria. Unfortunately, that civilization did become lost because it was infiltrated by lower vibrations that were harmful to it. But in terms of working in a harmony with the natural world and the natural technologies available to you, and also being able to create plenty and create enough sustenance and experiences, that was an ideal civilization. It was very much aligned with the use of crystals and understanding the way that shape and form can affect the whole energy of a whole civilization. So, for example, many of the ways that you build your houses in your current societies, the shape of them is not particularly helpful to the resonance of the body and to the movement of energy. Also, you have many different frequencies that come in that are from technologies that don't work with the natural rhythms of the earth and are harmful to that too. So once you learn how to move your information around in a way that is aligned with energetic vibration, then that will alter the ways in which you experience your whole civilization. So the shape of buildings is one of the things. The materials that they are made from also comes into that, and also the ways in which structures are actually built. You may walk past a building site in your civilization now and find the noises from that are very, very jarring to you. But in the times of Lemuria and even to the beginnings of the ancient Egyptian societies, sound was used in order to move different objects and structures. And the sound and the frequencies that were used, they had what you would understand as anti-gravitational properties, but gravity is also something in itself, along with many of your other forces, that have become perceived in your darker times. This does not mean that they don't exist, but they have been drawn into conscious awareness, and because they have become part of conscious awareness, they become incredibly difficult for humans to understand how to use them in a different way, how to not be restricted by them. So your perception as a whole community of gravity means that you all feel that and are acutely aware of it all the time. So the idea of movement that defies that is almost impossible for many of you, whereas a couple of 1,000 years ago that was not the case. So the ways in which a lot of the constructions occur have a difference in the energy and the resonance and how that affects the people that are within that society. So if you're exposed to a lot of noise that is jarring and is not pleasant for the human body, that will affect all of your energy collectively. Not in a great way like some of the other frequencies, but the civilization and the development of it is gentler and allows for more intuitive opening and higher connection between each other and higher connection to source, when you are not constantly exposed to shapes, movements, sounds that are harmful to your body and your energy. So when you can work with the natural world and use the natural resources that the planet has, and use crystals, for example, to amplify some of the pleasant frequencies and harmonies, then your food will grow better, your water will be cleaner, and life will be able to flourish in a way that means that you don't need some of the invasive technologies or chemicals that are currently being used within your society.
Is there something practical that people living in the current structures that we have to live in can enhance the energy in their homes?
Yeah, the more that you can bring in anything natural into your home, so whether it's plants, crystals as well, there are different crystals for different reasons, but they are powerful and they were used for huge structures back in the times of Lemuria. So the more that you can bring that into your home, it will start to make the energy gentler of some of the things that have caused you maybe some harm. Also, if you are able to round off some of the corners within your home so that you are not in quite such angular buildings, that actually changes some of the energy of the body, and having as minimal intervention from other frequencies as possible is useful. But your bodies are actually really starting to be able to take in and integrate some of those frequencies, which many have feared for a long time. that they were going to cause great harm, but actually human bodies are magnificently more able to adapt and transform frequency than you are led to believe. So also by having different crystals and natural objects in your home, you will begin to transmute some of those frequencies that are harmful anyway.
So fascinating. I absolutely love listening to you guys talk. Thank you so much for coming through for us today.
You're very welcome, and we are very grateful for the opportunity to connect with you, and look forward to expanding our knowledge and our awareness with you when there is ever an opportunity to do so.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello. How are you feeling?
I felt like I was moving sideways then. We were going, off, I think.
Jessica Taylor, thank you so much for
You're more than welcome.
coming.
I've really enjoyed this.
Yeah,
It's been brilliant.
it's been really fun. We should do something again.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah,
I'd love to.
awesome.
We can do some full-on channeling or discuss all of it more. That's great.
Get some more questions. If you guys have any questions that you'd like to hear the Pleiadians talk about, well, Jessica's got loads of stuff on her channel for a start, which I'll put in the caption below. And your book's out now.
Yeah, that's available at the moment. If you follow the link in my bio on Instagram to Stan Store, you can purchase the book on there.
What's it called?
It's called Good Vibrations.
Oh yeah.
It will be available on some other platforms soon, but we're just kind of testing the water with that at the moment.
Yeah, you got to get out there, haven't you?
Yeah. And there's also through that same link there are free meditations, other live audience channelings, recordings of those that you can access and things. So there's a fair bit on there.
And if you're in Cornwall, or if you want to come to Cornwall for a holiday, you do monthly live channels.
I do monthly live channels.
Yeah, and they're really cool. Yeah, you can ask
looking
questions.
to travel around a little bit more in the forthcoming year, but for now, Cornwall is the spot.
Yeah, Cornwall's home.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for listening.
And
having me here.
Yeah,
wonderful.
Awesome. See you again soon.
Bye.
Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. Let us know what you think in the comments, and if you have any other questions that you would be interested in asking the Pleiades. You can find Jessica at Jessica Taylor Intuitive. I'll put her link in the caption. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.